Hey guys, it's Kris with the Tabletops and Tentacles Kickstarter rundown. This is our top 10 tabletop games currently on Kickstarter that end sometime in the next 14 days. As you can see, quarantine hair. We had a few people ask if we could vary the format on this a little bit and do a little bit of the picture-in-picture video of us actually looking at them too. Not sure why, but figure we'd do it. It's not that much more work. Anyway, this is Kickstarters active on the site that will end in the next 2 weeks. So there's a lot of bigger ones that have launched more recently that aren't going to be on there. This is just stuff in the next 2 weeks. Some of it I've pledged for, some of it I haven't, and we'll just kind of run through it and see what there is worth backing and what I think is just kind of interesting on the site right now. With the coronavirus and everything going on, it's sort of a weird time for Kickstarter. Some things are doing better than you would expect, some things are doing much worse than you would expect, and I don't know that there's a lot of logic behind it, but let's check it out anyway. Here are the top 10 tabletop games active on Kickstarter as of April 28th, 2020. So first up, we have Ankh, Gods of Egypt from CMON. Obviously, CMON's a big beast in the world of Kickstarter, and this one's currently at $2 million with 18,000 backers and 6 days to go. So this is... I believe this is another Eric Lang game. It's designed by Eric Lang, art is by Adrian Smith, and Studio McVeigh is doing all the minis on it. The minis, as always with CMON, look amazing. The game looks really fun. It's a 90-plus minute game for 2 to 5 players, and like a lot of CMON stuff, it seems a little bloated, in my opinion, but it looks fun as heck. The problem with it is the base game's $100. To really get everything that they've got on it, it's closer to about $200 easily before shipping. But the minis are amazing. I mean, look at the detail in these. They're all really super cool looking. I especially love the Egyptian god aspect of it and the really cool details in this, like the worshippers around Osiris's feet here. Really cool stuff. If I had more money, I would be backing this, if only because the miniatures are so awesome. Like, even just the camels are really impressive pieces of art. I'll be honest with you, I don't know that much about the game. It appears to have battle and gods and minions, but although this is on my top 10, I had no real intention of backing it because I can't afford a $250 game right now, unfortunately. And I think CMON backing or launching this against Frosthaven during the pandemic with as many games as CMON has open right now is a little weird to me, frankly. I know that just between my brother and I, we're waiting on 4 games from them. It gets harder to justify giving them another $200 when you're waiting on $400 worth of games. So that's sort of where I land with those. Next up is Tales from the Loop, the board game. So apparently Tales from the Loop is taking over the entire world right now. Not only are they on board games, they've got an Amazon show, they're the RPG, they're just a series of amazing art by Simon Stalenhag's art. I love his stuff. I believe he has like 700 pieces of art from this now. It's sort of a retro futuristic 80s thing with mechs and post-apocalyptic touches, and it looks amazing. Things from the Flood is really cool. I'm not super into this game for some reason, and I'm not honestly sure why, because it's right up my alley. The minis are super cool looking. I love the retro paint job aesthetic of them in particular. That's probably my favorite part, is that all of the mechs and everything are utilizing like a 1970s, 1980s color scheme and paint layout, which I think is really fun. So that's Tales from the Loop. It is live for another 9 days. They've hit 230,000. I kind of expected it to do better than that. So, it's doing pretty good. It looks like a fun game. The gameplay in it is pretty interesting to me, but if I was backing this, it would be for the aesthetic, honestly. Next up is Resiside by Badgers from Mars Games. And this is their first project on here. I've been following the artist for this, Sketch Goblin, on Instagram for quite some time. He does a lot of this like really interesting, minimalistic, limited color palette D&D characters, and I love his art style. I think it's really cool. It's got a lot of expression in it considering the lack of detail in it, and it's just got this like beautiful aesthetic. I'm not so sold on the game itself because it's not really a game. It's a poker. You can play this with a standard card deck. The clever thing about that, if you want to try it out, they give you the rules and you can pull out a standard card deck and play it. It's made 22,000, so it's doing great, but I think it's doing great as much from a playing card collector standpoint as it is a tabletop game. But from a playing card standpoint, it's gorgeous. And just, I love Sketch Goblin's art so much. I think that the overall color aesthetic is beautiful. I actually, one of our RPG adventures in the first issue of Tabletops and Tentacles, I drew direct inspiration from his style of artwork for the art for that one, just because I love it so much. I think it's really unique and cool, and it was a really interesting challenge to work in because you've got to have a real mindful awareness of where joints and colors have to hit so that you can have this minimal style but still convey detail and story in a piece of art. It's really interesting. So that's called Resiside, and it is live on Kickstarter for another 5 days, and it's also just a super rad deck of cards. We actually use just a standard poker deck for challenges occasionally when we're playing RPGs, so this would actually be a super fun thematic choice for that. Number 7 is Bulknut, which is an asymmetrical skirmish game for 2 players. Now, I'm always on the lookout for smaller box games and for 2-player only games because often it's just me and my brother playing or just me and my wife. So this one I am particularly interested in. It's Vikingy. It's $25 and it's a very tile-based skirmish game, and I kind of dig the aesthetic of it. The art's very cartoony, it's very colorful and bright. Reminds me a little bit of Tiny Epic Heroes. Tiny Epic Quest. But it looks really fun. It's got some unique different characters. There's Valkyries and elves and dwarves and dragons, and I like the art style a lot. Like, that goblin's super fun. It's a fairly easy system. They also do have a 3-player, 4-player mode that you can use to play, and it just looks like a fun game. They're doing pretty well. They're at 7,800 with 42 hours to go. So if you want in on this game, get in on it soon. Next up is Vale Wraith, which is a solo fantasy quest game. I'm also always into solo games because they're hard to find, and particularly good ones. I think the art in this is awesome. It's all grayscale. It's got this like nice rough painted look to it. The game itself, I can't remember what the playtime is on it. I think it's listed here somewhere. But it's sort of playing with your memories and your experiences as you play the game. It's got different actions you can do, and it just looks really interesting. I love the aesthetic of it. It takes 30 to 40 minutes to play, which is a reasonable time for a single player. It also does let you play with multiple players if you have multiple copies of the game, which I think is cool. Just looks really interesting. I think it's got a great aesthetic. The art is simple, but in a way that appeals to me. Like, normally this style of art isn't something that I really look for in a game, but when it's grayscale, for some reason it's way more appealing to me. They're not doing any stretch goals. It's basically just the game, which is about $38, so not bad. They've done some really interesting stuff. They did Gloom of Kilforth, which is a pretty fun single game that my buddy talks about quite a bit. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about Vale Wraith. I like how all of their stuff is that traditional fantasy naming convention where they take 2 words and cram them together. Speaking of which, Frosthaven. So obviously $9.5 million. This game is a behemoth, and you're either already backing it or you have no interest in it. I am backing it for a whole dollar because I do not have money for more of that, and frankly, Gloomhaven is still sitting on my shelf unplayed. I would like to play it eventually. I've spent a lot of time getting ready to play it and have never played it. And to dive into a second 100-hour game version of it is a tough pull for me. However, it is pretty rad. I like some of the add-ons that they've done. I like the idea of Frosthaven. The outpost itself changes as you play. You add little stickers to build new buildings that you can then use in the game. Super cool stuff. I think this is superior. If I didn't already own Gloomhaven, I'd probably be getting Frosthaven instead. Next up is the Storymaster's Tales, the Reiko Deep Dungeon. And this is sort of a tabletop RPG hybrid, and it's for 1 to 5. So again, it's got a solo mode. It's got 4 days left. It's funded. It's really interesting looking. It's got like an adventure game book. It's got cards, and it does have some actual RPG elements in it as well. And I think I'm gonna have to check this one out. It's pretty reasonably priced. I think it's the print and play is $19, the full printed version's $38, which isn't too bad considering everything that it includes. It looks really interesting. A lot of the storytelling and stuff in it looks really strong, and it's definitely a storytelling style game. So if you don't enjoy that, you're probably not going to love this game, but I think it looks really cool. Again, it's got this like gorgeous black and white aesthetic that seems to be having a little bit of a renaissance lately. I've seen quite a few games coming out, particularly dungeon-themed ones that are either kind of just a sepia or just a straight grayscale. And I'm not complaining about that. I think it's really cool. Next up is Ambush Epic, which is a semi-co-op dungeon crawl. And they are about halfway to their goal. So these guys may not hit it. Their goal was high. It was $41,000. This is their first project. They've only backed 18 others, and they're a Spanish one. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned about this. It looks really nice. I hope it happens because I think it looks really fun. So again, it's kind of that classic dungeon crawl setup where you've got your character, you've got the stuff your character has, you have certain things you're mitigating or controlling, and then it has lots of monsters. A lot of monsters with hooded faces and kind of a unique look to them. It's about an hour-long game, and it looks really neat. I think it's a fun setup. I think it's a kind of a quicker laydown dungeon player that doesn't have a lot of setup as far as that's concerned, but it comes with 88 dice, which is significant, and that's probably its biggest downfall for me. Is it's like $60 for the pledge plus the Oracle's Chamber, which is like a whole nother set of villains and equipment and stuff that seems like it's sort of essential from what I was looking at. Like, it feels like you're missing out if you don't have that add-on. And that's a lot of money for what it is, but it's really cool looking. I love the dwarf for the Nodri art a lot. I think he's really cool looking. Next up, the Ratcatcher, which is from Platypus Industries, and these guys I have been following on my assorted game making Facebook groups for a while now. The art style is really appealing to me. They also started making this the same time I was working on a game that had rats in it that I'm still working on. They're fully funded. They've got 13 days left still. This game's really cool looking. It's a solo game. It's 30 minutes, and the aesthetic on it is awesome. There's all these super creepy rats. I just think it's such a cool like visual look. Again, limited palette, very grayscale, and I'm not like going out of my way to select these type of games, although they do appeal to me. That just happens to kind of be the flavor of the quarantine for some reason. It's really interesting, but there are a ton of grayscale or limited color palette games live on Kickstarter right now. It's strange. But the Ratcatcher looks really fun. So it's a dice-based combat system, and you are kind of moving through a city you're fighting off the rats. They can hoard. They can Rat King at you. You're gathering magic cheese and resources. And I just think it looks really fun. I love these rat meeples that they've got. And I'm all in on this. I haven't backed it yet, but it's been starred for me to back as long as I can afford it when it comes due. But I think it looks really cool. So Ratcatchers is done in 13 days, and this was almost my pick of the week, but They Live is still live. This has 44 hours left to it. This is based off of the classic John Carpenter 80s pulp cult classic Roddy Piper horror sci-fi film. It has the cool They Live sunglasses going on with it. This is from Iconic Studios, which I believe I think this is their actual first game on here, not just their first Kickstarter game. But this is really cool. You play as either the humans or the invaders. It's sort of a hidden role thing. The Hoffman lens is really cool because when you play it across certain cards, it reveals different messages or the truth of things. This game's rad. I'm super excited about it. It's $60. Or I guess that's just the pledge I backed at. I think it's at... Nah, the standard edition's still $60. I can't say enough good things about this game. I think it looks really fun. I think it captures the spirit of the Carpenter film. Who knows, maybe there'll be 15-minute alley battles in this as well, but it is the only game on this list that as soon as it went live, I backed it, because I love John Carpenter's stuff, and I particularly love They Live. It's also one of my brother's favorite movies. He loves Keith David, so we're pretty much required to back any game that has a playable Keith David character. So, yeah, that's our top 10 live on Kickstarter for the week of April 28th, 2020. It's almost May. Hope everybody's staying safe, being healthy. If you'd like to support the channel, we'd love a subscribe button. Hit the little bell for notifications. And also check out our Patreon. Tabletops and Tentacles issue 1 is out in about a week now. I'm just finishing up some final layouts, a couple of last little tweaks to some of the articles and artwork. And then our magazine will be available for the entire world to check out. I would love it if you went to our Patreon and looked at it, saw if it was something you're interested in. I just released a free ebook of the Dunwich Horror over there in conjunction with our book club article in the first issue. And it's going to be kind of a Comic Con and a magazine. It's covering tabletop games, RPGs, comics, fiction. We've got an entire RPG inside there from a creator named Ben. But you can check out Tabletops and Tentacles at patreon.com/deeplydapper. And thanks for watching, everyone.